Yeah, I directed a voice actor for Fallout Yesterday. So this is not about how I voiced a character. This is about how I worked with a mod team for Fallout Yesterday, a Fallout 2 conversion mod that restores Van Buren, the Black Isle canceled version of Fallout 3. So hey, welcome to the Kitsune Voices channel. I am Crimson Gray. If I am directing any one of you viewers right now, it would be to those interested in Fallout Yesterday and those who are seeing me for the first time and wondering, who is this guy? I am the voice director, part-time voice actor, and writer for Fallout Yesterday. What is my job in Fallout Yesterday? Simply put, I go into the documents of Van Buren, all of the cancel designs of Fallout 3 from Black Isle, and I fill the gaps, expand, and put more nuance and direct takes of what the original design of Van Buren intended for players. What that means is, say for example, the topic of the day, which is Alexandra, and the Mormonism of Van Buren, I go into the dialogue tree of how those characters will react, how they represent the ideas and context of these design documents into actual reactive gameplay. So on my end of the December update for Fallout Yesterday that you guys are hearing about, I'm going to go over how I do the writing process for a character like Alexandra, a companion that you could take with you on your journeys through the world map, and her reactive quests, how I got about to casting her with the voice actors we got, and the approach, just design-wise, of the kind of person she came to be from just the design documents we got. But for those of you who actually don't know what we're talking about, I'm actually going to let the lead PJ take it away with what this update's about, what is Fallout Yesterday, and what can you expect if you follow along and see for yourself the mod that we've been making.
Hello everybody, this is PJ Hexer, the project lead for Fallout Yesterday. I'd like to share some insights into what's happening behind the scenes during our development process. What is Fallout Yesterday? Fallout Yesterday is a free implementation of the cancelled Fallout game, codenamed Van Buren, recreated using the Fallout 2 engine. What can fans expect from the December update? The December update introduces an entirely new location, Mesa Verde. In addition, we've added support for translations, remastered many songs, introduced new graphics for NPCs and monsters, and fixed several bugs. What's the biggest highlight of the update for you? That would be Alexandra the Bounty Hunter, our first fully voiced companion. Look for her in the canyons of Mesa Verde. How was implementing Alexandra? It was a fantastic experience. Companions are some of the most enjoyable characters to create, aside from the protagonists and antagonists, of course. The process began with reviewing her official design document, which served as the foundation for your excellent writing. Once her dialogue was finalized, we set out to find a suitable voice actress, while our 3D artist worked on her talking head and unique sprite based on her concept portrait. I'm currently programming her behavior and integrating her voice lines into the engine. What advice would you give to anyone attempting a project like Fallout Yesterday? My advice is to use a modern engine that enables non-programmers to implement their content easily.
So with that explanation from PJ of our December update and what Fallout Yesterday is, it's now up to me to explain my approach when writing Alexandra, and how for those of you inspired enough to become a writer in any field of modding or even game design, you could hopefully take a page out of my book, albeit crude and a bit messy, in writing NPCs and characters. So, let's get right into it, starting with how does one compile writing for an NPC, especially a companion? My approach always goes down, no matter how big or small the NPC is, with the following: a psychological profile, dialogue and behavior construction, quest construction, and the dialogue, perks, combat dialogue, so on, in normal gameplay mechanic. So, let's start with, of course, psychological profile. what does that even mean? Why is that even for an NPC or a character or anything? Well, simply put, the best way to approach designing characters, NPCs, anything really, for a game is why do characters act the way they do? Why do characters think the way they think? And why do characters even talk the way they talk? It all comes down to a psychology. It all comes down to a psychological pattern. And so, when it came to Alexandra, we actually had to go with the following. With an affinity towards violence and icy stares, Alexandra often hosts these attributes most when around men. One can easily see a pattern begin from how she left her family in New Canaan. Presumably from a crude post-world practice of Mormonism, Alexandra would have endured some semblance of patriarchal and religious trauma. The biggest influence of this trauma came from the teachings of Jeremiah Rigdon, also known as the Living Prophet. The following teachings that burdened Alexandra's upbringing from Jeremiah was one of forced patriarchal norms. The following is a prophetic moral that Jeremiah preaches in belief from God, which is the following. Because the men of New Canaan die often in defense of the town, men are allowed to have multiple wives, that men and women would abstain from the use of drugs and alcohol to ensure clear-headed thought, and that people of all colors, shapes, and sizes should be allowed into the New Canaan community if they have pure hearts. Keep in mind the transfer of power to Jeremiah Rigdon would have occurred in 2245, just as Alexandra turned 20. Prior to this and Judah Black's death, Alexandra witnessed the horrors of New Jerusalem's destruction by hand of desperate refugees of the NCR Brotherhood War. This aspect ties severely to her cynical nature regarding aid to those she deems healthy and an apathy in general to patient care. In the course of her adolescence, she witnessed her father dumbly look past the horrors that desperate people committed. Added with insult to injury of Jeremiah's new reign, Alexandra became disillusioned with the Mormon way. The patriarchal system that Jeremiah enforced with the hands of God alienated Alexandra to look outward to all the sin and debaucheries that she was deprived of. As she wandered to Hoover Dam with a caravan in tow, she would take her life to a series of disciplines on the frontier. So to kind of wrap it up in a very simple way of concluding, Alexandra has a lot of anger, cynicism, and rage when it comes to religion, cult-like shenanigans, and, of course, misogyny. Of course, she's no bleeding heart either. She does not really care much to take care of those who are often dead weight to her and aren't bleeding all over the floor. And to make matters worse, any teaching that the Mormon Church could have given Alexandra, she gives a solid FU to as she decides to smoke, drink, and do whatever she wants with her body in the wasteland, which drives her to thrill-seeking in the occupation that players find her as a bounty hunter. In her state of being, Alexandra believes a well-rounded person is a prosperous person, with a streak of rebellion against institutions that enforce one-dimensional lifestyles. A daredevil through and through, she will chase her selected target to the ends of the earth, as seen with blackjack. Players will only be able to convince her differently when showing how prestigious other avenues are. Players who often approach her with ideals of a free living venture with female persuasion are sure candidates to win Alexandra's good side. So let's just stop right there. Why did I design Alexandra this way with the few gaps that I could get out of her character design from the canceled documents to, of course, her crossover with the Hands of God, Jeremiah Rigdon, New Canaan, and Jericho? Simply because I feel like someone of her stature would have these extremities in the opposite way given the extremities of the character Jeremiah. To kind of briefly explain, I need to first lay out what Jeremiah Rigdon is in the context of Alexandra's life.
That man, Jeremiah, by the time I turned 16, he began to poison my folks into something awful. I ditched him, but tried to come back. Was 20 by the time I saw this.
Jeremiah Rigdon was born in New Canaan, raised in the Mormon echoes of the New Canaanite way. While witnessing the horrors of what became a sacking of his home, his call to action wouldn't come until he was in his 20s. When Jeremiah was in his 20s, he suffered a severe fever from which no one thought he would ever recover. While he was in his fever, he started babbling strange words that no one in New Canaan could understand. After coming out of his fever, he claimed that God had spoken through him and told him that he was the living prophet to replace Judah Black, the former prophet of New Canaan. Many of the Mormons in New Canaan did not believe this. They argued that God did not speak through the living prophet in such manner. Jeremiah held to his convictions and watched as many of the New Canaanites left with Bishop Mordecai. Because of these delusional fevers, Jeremiah has developed a probable psychosis that enables his superstitious claim as the living prophet. Because the young man had no access to nuance and skepticism, his religious fervor drove this conclusion into a gathering, the Hands of God. This Hand of God would soon form as supporters of Jeremiah's claims, creating an echo chamber of zealotry. Jeremiah had a vision telling him that the Mormons cannot restore themselves to their former glory until Jericho has been cleansed of sin. So he formed the Hands of God to carry out the deed. Although he'd rather they just submit, give the Mormons the land, and move away. He presents any and all acts of human nature on a negative as simply the devil's rebellion, a convenient throwaway for Jeremiah to never contend with humanity's agency against his morality. This ensures that he is both merciful and kind, even as he declares threats and acts of robbery or else. This is a cognitive dissonance for Jeremiah and his flock, because they are able to judge the sinner without admitting hatred. They could look down upon the perverse, amoral, violent, and opportunistic wastelander while proclaiming acceptance and love, so long as the people they accept undergo their way of life. It is this delusional hypocrisy that drives Alexandra away, that makes her look at any and all religious beliefs and/or superstitions as that of a cult. I want to take a huge pause here before we continue to give a bit of a preamble, a forewarning, and also just for anyone who is trying to emulate what I've done in this behind the scenes so far. When I write and discuss these topics, religious institutions, religious trauma, and how these institutions might fail someone like Alexandra, I am not writing Alexandra as a form of opinion piece against any religious belief, institution, or sect at all. Rather, I think for what was given to me of Van Buren's own documents about Mormonism, about Alexandra, Jericho, New Canaan, Jeremiah, the Hands of God, all of it, it was to simply execute the human nature aspect of religion and the apocalypse, of what would happen driving someone like Alexandra, this bounty hunter, hedonistic kind of rough and tumble woman, from the church, and why. And to kind of give humanity in the gray area of this entire ordeal. Because Alexandra is no saint either. She's not really perfect in the fact that, yes, she is rebelling against what she believes was an alienating, misogynistic institution, but she's doing it in ways that are not healthy, especially when players find out that she's a bounty hunter for the Legion. Yes, Caesar's Legion, like the one that you've played and seen in Fallout New Vegas, that definitely was originated from Van Buren, is the current employer and contract giver to Alexandra in the quest that players find when she's camped outside of a cave. But why? Well, she doesn't really care who the employer is or who the person that sends out a contract or hit is from. She just wants to hunt a target down for the thrill of it, and if it happens to be someone of a superstitious or religious background or spiritual, that's bonus points for her. So, all in all, Alexandra is not really a morally good person in quotations, albeit she's probably not cruel and sadistic and goes out of her way to kill people. She definitely doesn't mind plugging a few holes in people, whether innocent or guilty. So I think I talked a lot already about Alexandra's psychological profile, how she is as a person, and just the way that she sees the world and why. But let's now talk about how she speaks, with dialogue and behavior construction. So, for those of you who have been probably playing the mod by now, depending on when this video is out, or are just downloading it and playing it right now as you're watching, you could probably see an interesting twang to her. That's because coming from New Canaan, Alexandra has a Utah accent in the way that she drops vowels, makes double modals, and adds consonances. I'm going to play a couple clips of videos I saw on the internet when I was researching how Utah dialect works, and why I also added a lot of extreme Wild West kind of drawl to it.
We tend to drop our vowels as well. Family, probably. Well, that's ignorant. Do you think there'll be any balloons at the family party? Sure hope so.
There we go. How do you say that?
Layton.
How do you say that?
Layton.
Layton.
This is a city in Utah. How would you say it?
Layton.
How about that?
Layin.
All right, well, what are those things called over there? Oh, those things? Those are called mountains. No, they're not. They're called mountains. Yeah, that's what I said. I said mountain. No, you didn't. You said mountain. Lol.
So overall, Alexandra is a twang-speaking bounty hunter who, if given a chance, would hunt down anyone she deems pathetic and vile. A bit on the vulgar side when taking care of patients, she despises healthy people seeking treatment with a vicious mockery. And here is a voiced demonstration between me as the patient and, of course, VETA PHEONIX as Alexandra. I've been lethargic lately. Is there anything you could prescribe?
Another ignorant bastard. Well, you ain't really dying, unless you came about your weight. Let me guess, though. You used to could on being fit?
What?
Chase a tumbleweed, it'll do you better.
So yeah, again, she's not really a bleeding heart for most people. And on top of this, as I mentioned before, Alexandra has grown up very wary of the male population, with her time amongst her family being a force of abstinent and patriarchal demands for women to be subservient. In this regard, female players will have an easier time to connect with Alexandra than male players would. Of course, male players with high charisma and barter could still gain favor from her. With this upcoming example, this is not an in-game example, so whatever I'm about to pitch right now during the process of this video, this is just a reenactment, let's just say, my own interpretation from my own writings and how it might map in post of the actual development and how it might differ. So I'm going to showcase my dramatization and then I'll actually show gameplay footage of how it is in post.
Example of default difficulty with male players.
Come with me. I have places to be that would give you fortunes you wouldn't believe.
Right. I'm fine on my own. Go fly them magic balloons to someone else.
Examples of barter checks with male players.
Join me, and I can guarantee the bounties will come to you. Tons of trouble finds me, and I could use someone of your talents. We'll split what loot we got off the corpses.
You don't look like the weaseling type. Fine. Probably need a gal who can stitch and shoot for you anyhow.
Examples of high charisma with male players.
Would you consider joining me on the road? Tons of sights to see, and I'm always in need of a tough doctor.
Well, I don't got many options. All right. I can't see's why's not. Don't come crying, though, whenever you scrape your knee. That shit just pisses me off.
So that's just 3 crude examples of how male players will have to convince Alexandra to join them First being, of course, the failure, the second being a barter check, and the third being a high charisma check. Now then, what about the female players because that's more favorable to her? Well, let's cue the response right now.
Shit. Should have been there when I was scraping the bottom of a bowl. Sure thing.
So hopefully that was a good demonstration in the writing process of scripting dialogue and how it often plays out. I'm now going to show what it is in post because at the end of the day, writers need to realize that whatever they write down is not going to be how it turns out fully in the development process. You might have visions and vivid imagery of how you want to go about it, and maybe all of your writings do make it through, but there will be fundamental changes thematically and feeling-wise based upon the implementation, the tools used to implement, and overall, the pacing of the dialogue back and forth with player choice, reactivity, and how it looks in game. And here's some post-development footage of this exact example, where you get to see Alexandra's talking head developed by GOATBOY, the implementation of all the dialogue and voice lines from PJ, and of course, the entire scripting in engine by PJ.
Now, who the hell are you? I got dibs on a bounty here, so you better scram. Do you usually walk up to strangers with guns poached outside caves? Anyhow, I understand friendliness and all, but you can kindly fuck off. Now, who the hell are you? I got dibs on a bounty here, so you better scram. Right back at you, Mr. Fish Eyes Little Dick. Now, who the hell are you? I got dibs on a bounty here, so you better scram. Hiding away in the shadows of a big old cliff, up near the top of a mesa rising out of the desert floor, you got Mesa Verde. That's where the ciphers live. Folk call them the Painted People on account of all the body heat they use. They ain't the biggest tribe around here, but their village up there on the mesa makes it real hard for anyone to get to them, even when they're outnumbered. Now, who the hell are you? Nosy, are we? Ugh, guess it don't matter much you knowin', since the green bastard ain't coming out. Super mutant fella by the name of Blackjack. For such a name, his luck definitely ain't winning him favors. Problem is, that mutant bastard has a minigun. Now, this might be rough and all, but I ain't risking my hide being sprayed out in a dank cave. So, figured I'd starve him out. Well, ain't that new? Someone trying to sweep me off my feet in the middle of a hunt. Much as I'm flattered, you can kindly stick that attempt at courtship where the sun don't shine. Now, who the hell are nosy, are we? Ugh, guess it don't matter much you know it. Can it, vulture? I know you slimy act from a bald eagle's view. Now try and poach off someone else's claim before I decide to play target practice. Now who the hell are nosy, are we? Ugh, guess it don't matter, except I need him alive. He's a potential slave, not some fucking beast to be hunted for taxidermy. Ugh, but by all means, if you want to get sprayed into a new moon, go ahead. If somehow you do get the drop on the bastard, I will split it with you. My word is bond. Just
So with all that footage, as you can see the differences from the writing process to the development and how it would look in its finished form, let's take a step back and talk about the accent and the way that a character speaks, and why I decided that Alexandra was going to have the kind of strange accent that she has. Well, as many of you know, the Utah accent is only a strand of her mannerisms and her dialect. Of course, I added more to it, such as uses, well-ises, spose instead of suppose, and all other myriads of different chopped up slurred words. Why? Because I felt like even though we are taking the DNA of the Utah accent, Alexandra being a bounty hunter that's more of a Western drawl in a post-nuclear world nearly 200 years after the fact, would probably have a weird accent and DNA as a bounty hunter on the trade, going from Hoover Dam to Jericho and so on, interacting and shaking hands with various entities from the NCR, Caesar's Legion, and anywhere in between, and thus developing a simpler way of speaking, a more Wild West exaggerative. Thus, of course, the aesthetics that we got with Alexandra, but on top of this too, I wanted to give a cowgirl archetype to deliver a couple of feelers, basically. One of which is a classic OG take from Fallout 2 regarding a form of cartoonization. Now, when I get into this topic about cartoonization in Fallout 2, I know there are many people who have critiques about Fallout 2, and I will forever remain the hardest Fallout 2 stan of the universe. But I do understand the critiques, and I think a lot of them are valid to an extent. And I'm not going to defend some of the egregious design choices of Fallout 2, but I also don't think it's so much to a degree that it should diminish Fallout 2's position in the IP at all. I think Fallout 2 was needed so that Fallout New Vegas could walk. And on that note, I also want to add that equally, albeit not as extreme on an attempt for humor, Fallout 1 had the same amount of cartoonization with characters such as Gizmo, the Cougar, Doc Morbid, and Decker. Many people can write down essays as to why the Fallout 1 cartoonization to Fallout 2 is very different, and I'm not going to contest that they are the same in any capacity. However, it was made in the 90s, so my argument stands that there was a 90s form of this cartoon dark comedy approach with both Fallouts. It's just one went more extreme than the other, I dare say. With that in mind, how does this work when it comes to developing NPCs for Fallout Yesterday? Surely we don't have to go the same way as the OG classics of Fallout, right? Well, I dare argue, yes, you kinda do. If it's being made in the Fallout 2 engine, which is what Fallout Yesterday is, then the main issue comes to how it's gonna look in-game. With the work of GOATBOY'S talking head and the aesthetics that we are creating with GOATBOY and the in-game of implementation by PJ, the main focus we always have took is this is going to be made in the classic Fallout engine. How are we going to be loyal and married to Fallout the classic while still working upon adding nuance of the old canceled documents? And as we build the bridge and gaps between the two, we also give a take that is refreshing and inspiring for people to play, keep playing, and also make sure that we are walking within the boundaries of a correct tone. So, in order to really answer this, we kind of have to go on what is Van Buren, or the better question, what was Van Buren? And why does it sit in this limbo of eternity that only now Fallout Yesterday and some other mod projects are trying to revive? Of course, just reading off the wiki, you know that Van Buren is the codename that Black Isle Studios assigned to their second iteration of Fallout 3, until the cancellation of December 8th of 2003, and would have been published by Interplay Entertainment. kind of prophetic, I guess, that we made the update in December, but more so on Christmas and not December 8th. Anyway, before the release of Fallout New Vegas in 2010, Chris Avallone, one of the main designers, mentioned that aspects from Van Buren would appear in Fallout New Vegas. The NCR Brotherhood War, the main framing device of Van Buren, is mentioned numerous times throughout the game, with the companion from Van Buren, Joshua Graham, appearing, as does Caesar's Legion. Now, if we just take that into account, and we take into account that, of course, Van Buren had a super messy history with just a short time span expected for their development, and then we compare it to Fallout New Vegas, it seems like Van Buren was the missing link in the evolutionary chain, so to speak, from the classic Fallout of 1 and 2 to then, of course, Fallout New Vegas. Remember how I mentioned my approach going from a Fallout 2 point of view with Van Buren regarding Alexandra? Well, I don't think it's coincidental that Fallout 2's designer, Chris Avallone, is also the designer of Fallout New Vegas, and the approach from Fallout 2, albeit very extreme on the humor side of things, was also somewhat approached with Chris Avallone in Fallout New Vegas. So his overall DNA from Fallout 2 to New Vegas is paramount to what I believe is the appropriate approach with revising Van Buren in the engine of Fallout 2 with Fallout Yesterday. Much like how many people would be very peeved that we ignore Fallout New Vegas altogether as the obvious successor to what would have been Van Buren, I think it's safe to say that writing off Fallout 2 is equally as ignorant and oblivious to what a Van Buren would have looked like. So the short answer on what is the appropriate approach and style, do we go from Fallout 1 all the way, Fallout 2 all the way, Fallout New Vegas just with a paint of the classic? The answer really is all the above. But you need to have a tightrope. You need to have an actual formula of what are we taking and why. What aspects of Fallout 1 are we taking? Are we taking the more dark and sinister body horror aspect with the Master? Are we taking the cartoonish Easter egg pop culture references from Fallout 2? Or more of the crime boss, new RENO of various factions to fight over territory and turf with? And if we're going from Fallout New Vegas, are we simply reinterpreting how Fallout New Vegas handled the Van Buren designs themselves? Are we even going so far as to add on Joshua Graham's aesthetic and look from Honest Heart onto the Hanged Man version of Joshua? You could see how overwhelming and daunting this task could be. So, my honest answer, just from my point of view, not the rest of the team, but just my point of view, is this. Fallout Yesterday is not Fallout New Vegas 2. It's not gonna be a Fallout New Vegas. It will never be a Fallout New Vegas. And even though it's in the Fallout 2 engine, it's obviously not gonna even be close to a Fallout 2 in execution and presentation. I am not even close to any of the designers that was and were a part of Fallout 2 and Fallout New Vegas. There's no Josh Sawyers, and we are simply a mod team. So, the reality is, we, no matter how much we think big and grandiose on the scale of design and approach and how we could go at it as writers, have to pace ourselves and kick our ass into reality that we can only go so far with the team we have and the skill sets of each team member. If we're not the implementers, if we're not the programmers, if we're not even really the 3D modelers, we need to just take a step back and just slow our roll. Understand that the attempt is what we need. So I'm attempting to create a love letter, let's just say, a olive branch DNA-wise between the OG classics of Fallout 1 and 2 with what became Fallout New Vegas, but we're not trying to create a Fallout New Vegas. We're just simply creating what we think stylistically, because of how Fallout New Vegas is a product of Van Buren, what would have then been a Black Isle Fallout 3. And so we have to take some leaps and boundaries with our interpretation. And my leap and boundary is that if the same designers came from Fallout 2, I am going to borrow some DNA, some aesthetics, some humor, and some approaches to character design from Fallout 2 to Alexandra. Which leads me to the last part about Alexandra's design: quest construction. Because of her immediate leap in the party by bounty hunting, most of her core issues will revolve around her motives for hunting people down. Seemingly from a troubled life as a black sheep in her family, Alexandra hooked up with a caravan bound for Hoover Dam. The only things she took with her were the clothes on her back and the medical knowledge she picked up from reading her father's books. Over time, as reactions to player choices in Quest, Alexandra will open dialogue to discuss the ethics and practice her companion partakes in. Obviously, if the player is a rabble-rousing thrill-seeker, Alexandra will warm up with affirmations of their choices. However, if Alexandra notices the player from a holier-than-thou perspective, even going so far as to crack down on acts of hedonism, contentions will brew. The quickest way to speed up Alexandra's disdain in arguments with player choice is the players deciding to aid the hands of God with Jeremiah Rigdon. Alexandra's quest can escalate drastically if players have the chance of throwing her in the middle of Jericho and the Living Prophet conflicts, whereas other back and forths slowly rope out the relationship between her and the player character. This is to ensure that roleplay choice with her in the party is consistent while not tying players strictly on proper paths of the open world. Players who decide to jump straight into the new canon-related content should have appropriate trigger markers for Alexandra to comment. Now to the heart of this quest design, where it leads. Alexandra, if players have been a positive force in her travels, will open up about her issues with Jeremiah and her family. This sets up 3 alternative paths in which players either help her seek vengeance, make peace, or fuel her habits for bounty hunting to a point of no return. In order for this quest to be simplistic and not overwhelming in rewriting parts of other quest designs, I have decided to make Alexandra's quest one-to-one with the main Jericho and New Canaan quest conflicts. That means Alexandra will have perks related to the conclusion of what happens if players side with Jeremiah, side with O'Connor, and what those decisions mean. Does the player side with O'Connor and killing all the Mormons, or simply killing Jeremiah? Does the player side with Jeremiah and trying to find a middle ground and peace so that 2 communities can live together? Either way, this unlocks a series of changes both mechanically about the way Alexandra will act in combat and in the world space, as well as her overall demeanor. So that was a lot to read over, but let's just break it down simply. Pretty much, there is an affinity system that you could earn from the player to Alexandra just interacting with the world space of Fallout yesterday. There will be other quests and implemented areas and factions and decisions that players will make that Alexandra will comment on, and there is an affinity system depending on how players react with Alexandra about opinions regarding the NCR, or Caesar's Legion, or certain quests that might involve bounty hunting. Either way, players, if they want to pace themselves and explore every branch there is in Fallout yesterday, could slowly earn that relationship with Alexandra, whether in the positive or the negative. But if players want to just jump right into it, they could easily achieve this by going straight back home where Alexandra lived. New Canaan. That's all well and good, right? Well, now comes the aesthetic and look of Alexandra, and who better to ask but my friend Goatboy,
Sometimes Johnson.
the Talking Heads animator himself. So, you're going to be hearing a series of questions being answered of what I asked by Goatboy on the 3D modeling end of Alexandra.
So what's the process? How do you do the stuff that you do? How does the process look like?
So the token end process, the first thing I do is the game comes with a handy little feature that allows you to see the description of the character in game. And often they're quite verbose, they're quite detailed, and often they're quite funny as well. And that gives me an initial idea in my head. And then I simply just talk to the character, and then through the dialogue, how the character reacts to certain actions, it kind of gives me an idea of what they look like in my head. And after that, I start the 3D modeling process. What I do is I always take an account of what the character, the little sprite of the character looks like, and what I mean by that is what clothes they are wearing. So for example, if they're wearing a leather jacket, I just give them a leather jacket, simple as. Once I finish the 3D model of the character, which is usually from the bus stop, I then think of the lighting, because lighting is quite important to give a good mood. So I try to give it like a dark contrasting shadow, especially I try to keep half of the face a bit shadowy. It gives it like a very, dramatic 90s look, which I quite enjoy. And after I finish the 3D model, then that comes the animating part, which can be a lengthy process, but enjoyable as well. So every single frame of animation gets rendered individually as an image format. And then every single frame gets converted into a BMP image with a limited palette. And that's what gives it the nice crusty Fallout 2 look, which I quite enjoy. After that, all of these BMP images get compiled into FRM files, which is the animation file that Fallout 2 uses.
For Alexandra's look, that's a character you've created recently?
So for inspiration, Fallout Van Buren came with design documents, and some things are quite descriptive and detailed, other things aren't. And luckily, in this case, Alexandra was quite descriptive. So there was already a description, which was like she's a bounty hunter. She has a blonde braided ponytail. She's wearing a duster. She has a hat. And so this already gave me an idea of what she looked like in my head. And then reading more about her, I already pictured this woman, which is quite rugged looking, you know. Kind of in my head, she was quite lean, has a long face, scars. But then I was given the image that I was using as a template for her. And I decided to make her look more similar to that image, you know. So that's why she looks a bit more youthful, and a bit of a rounder face. And that's pretty much what gave me the idea of her character and what she looks like. And another funny thing is I made the sprites for her after making her talking head. And only after completing like thousands of frames of animation, I realized that the character was quite smaller compared to everybody else. So it became a character trait of hers that she's short.
Okay, so what's the best part of modding the classic Fallout?
Well, first thing first, I absolutely love these games. So it makes it a lot easier to work on something you love. They weren't my first Fallout games. I grew up with Fallout 3. I only discovered Fallout 1 and 2 later in the years, and I just fell in love with them. I absolutely love how interactive they are, the open-ended nature, a philosophy that is still being used to this day. And this translates very well into the modern aspect, as it gives you many avenues to be creative. I enjoy the coding aspect almost as much as the artistic aspect, because it really allows you so much different ways to solve situations. Freedom, which I really, really like. So the best part for me is just the fun that I get from this, to keep a long answer short. Also, just giving life to such an old game is just satisfying. When you work on something for a few hours and then you actually see it work in game, it's such a satisfying feeling, you know. I really enjoy that part.
Any advice to people that want to follow your path or do the same thing?
So if somebody wants to follow my path, I'd say lots of coffee. Drink lots of coffee. No, I'm joking. On a serious side, I say just be patient, you know, expect mistakes. They're gonna happen. It's an old game. It's a janky game, so not everything is gonna work at the start. But the more you try it, the more things are gonna be natural and fast because you build a workflow from it. And I say the most important thing is just have fun. Fun is the most important thing. If you don't have fun anymore, then take a break, do something else, and then come back to it when you're ready.
What about the technical part of it?
Technical part is, I say when it comes to the talking head aspect, I say just have fun drawing characters. Just have fun making character designs, and
have a good computer.
Having a good computer is useful as well. I don't have a very strong computer, but if you're rendering lots of frames, you need a good GPU usually, which is not my case, which is why the work takes a lot longer than usual, but having a good computer is useful.
So yeah, that was all the answers given by GOATBOY Sloth Johnson. Give a round of applause for him, because he is the reason I even got on Fallout yesterday, as well as, well, the fucking look of Alexandra. So, great man, great talent, absolutely. He deserves all the praise you can give him. Now, on to the last and final bit, in my eyes, which is the voice talent. And it's about how can a character be given life through voice when it comes to her cadence and everything I laid out in terms of a psychology, behavior, and quest design. We're going to go straight to the voice actress herself, VETA PHEONIX.
Okay, Crimson, here is your interview question thing answered. Question 1. How did you first get the role? And what was your first impression regarding the character Alexandra? Well, I actually happen to work a lot with Crimson, and he is the person who was doing voice directing for the project. And so when he knew that they needed a female voice, he thought I was a good fit. So he asked me to send in an audition. And so I did. And the leader of the project agreed that it was a good fit. So there we go. My first impression of Alexandra was that she has a lot of spunk. And I like playing characters that have a lot of meaning behind what they do and say. Like, she definitely has people that she likes and people that she doesn't like. And you can definitely tell, without spoiling anything, who she doesn't like. And she definitely is a go-getter as far as like trying to make things right. So I like that about her a lot. It's actually really the kind of character that I enjoy playing, because I've played a lot of characters that had that in common with her. Question 2, what were the challenges and ease for you when it came to the headspace of the character? Well, I kind of answered that a little bit. A character with a good backstory is often, the type of character that I can really get into, because I can sit and think about, okay, this character went through this and that, and this is why they're going to be reacting in this way to certain questions or to certain events happening or something like that. She, like I said before, likes certain people and doesn't like certain other people. Not to spoil anything. So knowing the things that she definitely does not like and being able to just be completely in disgust of those things, that's something that I feel I do pretty well. Question 3. What was the recording process like with Crimson, in your own words? Well, as always, I often enjoy talking with Crimson, so there were some laughs, some cries. No, I'm just kidding. We definitely had a lot of fun with it, and he put on his best Alexandra impression and read the lines before I read them, and he sounded like a lovely young lady while doing it. And then I would repeat back to him, and then he would tell me, okay, now give me it this way instead, and let's try this other direction with the intonation or something like that. But yeah, it's I often feel extremely at ease when I'm recording with Crimson because, like I said, we've also worked on several other smaller projects that we won't get into. But yeah, like it's very easy to get into a recording session with somebody that you feel comfortable with and have them make suggestions or say, hey, let's try this a different way. And I think it's great because then, he's hearing what I sound like at the same time. I don't always hear exactly what I sound like when I'm recording at that time, so I might not realize that I should do a different kind of a take necessarily, but he was really good in pointing out some different ways that I could say the lines to make it, make sure that we have enough takes in order to get the right thing. Oh gosh, what is Alexandra in your own words as a character? Alexandra is definitely a survivor with meaning. She definitely wants to make some people pay. I won't tell you who exactly. She definitely is a very, very independent lady, and she will let you know when you cross the line, and I like that about her. She's got a lot of attitude. She's a very strong female, and I like playing very strong female roles. What advice would I give for any actor or actress doing a role similar to Alexandra? Well, I mean, honestly, I think the best advice is to really feel the feelings and be in that moment of knowing that they feel this way about these certain elements that are in the game, and really try to live it. Don't actually just read from the script. You need to actually live those emotions and bring them forthright, and to really make it apparent in the way that you are expressing your voice. Definitely bring the character to life. Try to be the character while you're saying the words.
And thank you, VETA PHEONIX, for those wise words. And with that said, as long as this video has been, we are finally towards the end. And what is there to say about everything you've seen today? Well, Alexandra was my first ever full attempt at writing a companion in the classic style of Fallout, through Fallout Yesterday and its Van Buren recreation, and hopefully with your guys' feedback, positive or even constructive and critique, I will continue to deliver on bringing more to the forefront. Because characters matter, people matter, and in order to tell a story about how war never changes, the people within those conflicts need to feel alive. And so, I hope with everything you've seen that I did my mission successfully. But before I go, there is a couple of things I want to announce and put out there. Yes, more projects to look forward to. So I'm going to keep it fast and loose so I don't take too much of your time. Starting with the Val Serrano 2.2 update, which adds 500 new lines of dialogue, a full name system, and a full-on new quest of restoring old scrapped content called Daedra to Pay, with my good buddy Eggs Benedict voicing said Daedric influence in the quest. It will finally put a chapter close on Val's journey into becoming a full-on mage. So for those of you who have been anticipating the finale to Val's journey in the College of Winterhold, be prepared, get ready, download it, and have a good time, because with a new feature, we now can update Valserano without you having to reload and redo an entire playthrough. Now, understand, I'm not the tech wizard of this, so if this doesn't work out for you, well, sorry, but it should work out, at least in theory. So, me personally, keep it a clean save no matter what, but if you want to at least try it out, hey, be the test dummy and see if it works. Next up, we have Tales of the New Reno Episode 0 Revamp. That's right, Cell Block Psycho is at it again with the Tales of New Reno series. This time, he's going back to the drawing board on one of his oldest entries into the series, Episode 0. For those of you who are unaware, Episode 0 was essentially The Hills Have Eyes meets Fallout New Vegas in the best way possible. But of course, it was made way back when, with a lot of outdated features, a lot of outdated decisions in terms of design, and, of course, performance. Now, it has a full-on makeover with everything you could ask for out of the concept. And I feature in this as a full-fledged companion, voice acting one of the most pivotal characters in the mod. And yes, I will be making a video about this soon, so this is kind of my way of wedging in that, hey, there might be a little future content in the making about a certain Tales of New Reno. Last but not least, and it is going to be a bit in the far future, CONCORD Stories, which is a Fallout 4 Sim Settlement 2 add-on. It is going to be an add-on to the famous Sim Settlements 2 mod for Fallout 4, much akin to a DLC, in the sense that we will be adding new people, new vendors, new quests, and new stories, as the title suggests. From my end of things and what I will be doing there, I will be serving as a trifecta of a voice actor, a writer, and a voice director. In fact, I actually have a couple of roles I've already voice acted, of characters I've written, and vice versa, directing someone to voice act. So you'll be seeing a lot of my flavor in CONCORD Stories within the elements of me purposely bringing this old vibe of Fallout 3, meeting, of course, some shenanigans akin to the classics. Whew! Alright, we're done! Okay, so as you can see on the screen, these are all the credits belonging to every developer of Fallout Yesterday and the collaborators such as VETA PHEONIX, who is the voice actress of Alexandra. Next over will be the lovely producers of the music that I make on the side for concept albums if you're into insane, freakish, electronic, death machine type music. And of course, over here is all my beautiful patrons and supporters who have been keeping me afloat during this awesome process of content creation. And with all that said, it's been Crimson Gray, and I hope you had a good day.